Liam, Noel, welcome along. Who would have thought would be sitting here all these years later celebrating 10 years of Oasis?
Me.
I mean, does it seem weird to you, though, you know, sort of hearing that, 10 years, Noel?
It's weird what's happened in the 10 years. It's not weird that we've been in a band for 10 years, because if we wouldn't have been successful, we'd have still been fanning about doing... We would have been in some capacity been in a band or been roadies or something like that. It's weird what's happened during the 10 years. I wouldn't have predicted that. I don't think anyone would. Well, you would have, wouldn't you? So.
Yeah.
What about for you, Liam? I mean, have you kind of sort of given it, you know, much thought? I mean, it's a bit of a landmark, isn't it? 10 years?
Yeah, it's good. It's all right, yeah. But I you know, you find something you like in life, you stick at it as long as you can. You know what I mean? And like, you know, 10 years, 20 years, I'll still be doing it. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm into it. You know what I mean?
Well, we're here to celebrate the band's, you know, 10th anniversary. I mean, you're about to embark on a celebratory tour as well. Tell us about those shows. I mean, have you kind of give them much thought? You know, what can the fans expect?
Well, the only thing we sat down and said what we consciously want to do is not look like a huge band going into a little gig and just with loads of flash, you know, gadgets and stuff like that. We just said, look, whatever we were doing in '94 when we were playing them gigs is what we'll use. If the last gig that we played in England was, or the last our gig was like Wembley, and if it's as emotional as that, if it's as emotional as that, then it'll be very emotional. But I just imagine it being fantastic now.
What's going through your head, Liam, with these sort of dates just about to start as well?
Stay sober, I would imagine.
Nothing really. That's what I just play a gig, man. And it's just good to play small ones again. You know what I mean? So them big silly things, you know, because they're a bit daft. Then you don't really graft as much on them big gigs. It's pretty easy to do them, I think. The small ones are a bit harder, I think.
Do you enjoy that, where you can see the whites of the audience eyes?
Yeah, I just love gobbing on people, you know, without meaning to, you know what I mean?
You old punk rocker, you.
Yeah.
Well, I had the privilege of interviewing the band in the early days. In fact, frankly enough, when Mr. Blobby was still ruling the charts, the Tories were still in power.
Don't be dissing Mr. Blobby, man.
And we were still reeling from the after effects of the grunge era as well. We would do some good old-fashioned rock and roll. Here's what you guys had to say about being in a band back in 1994. Watch this.
I'm after it all. I want to be a star, you know. But not, you know the score. I'm after it. Sorry. I'm after it. I'm not being a... I'm before it. I want being a, like, I don't know.
When you say you want to be a star, I mean, you know...
I don't want to be like, no, I don't want to be a
big star.
Yeah, the big, nice star, yeah. That's what I want to be. I want to be myself. Find it hard sometimes, but, you know, get there. That's it.
Now,
I make loads of money and all that, so I can have a big house somewhere and all that, you know, and that's about it.
Probably not anywhere near my big house.
Yeah, next door, matey.
No chance.
No, did he ever have a place near your big house?
We lived right around the corner from each other for about 2 years.
Yeah, and I was there first, actually. He got a big house next to my big house.
I bought my house first, and then he moved in, but he moved in before me, you see. But it was not pleasant. I won't try and dress it up. You know.
I mean, you know, the great thing about you guys is that, you know, you've always had this sort of great upfront sort of punk attitude. You know, was a big house and all the trappings that went with it, was that, you know, sort of, why was that important to you, Liam?
Why? Because if someone else is going to have a big house out of you grafting your balls off for 10 years, you might as well have one too. You know what I mean? And that's the way I see it.
What about for you, Noel?
Mate, it was purely material. You know, if John Lennon had a big house, then I wanted a bigger one. And the biggest telly, and the biggest car.
And now, you know, it's not, to me, it's changed now. I'm at like a big house now, you know what I mean?
I mean, you go through that when you go through that when you're young, though. Do you know what I mean? I suppose there when we were doing that interview, we had an inkling that we were going to be pretty successful. So you know, we wanted. I mean, why wouldn't you? We probably only signed off 2 months before that. You know, so it's like we spent most of our lives skint and with no prospects. It's like, yeah, I mean, if somebody's telling me I'm the future of rock and roll, then get me an house. You know. Then get me an house that looks like the future of rock and roll lives in it, please, thank you very much, and then a spare one out the back. Yeah.
Looking at that interview, what's your kind of sort of immediate reaction, you know, kind of sort of seeing yourself...
I've almost got the same clothes on.
Apart from the glasses?
Yeah, apart from the glasses, which I could have... You look like...
Do you know, I was just about to say, you haven't said anything yet.
You look like the geezer out of Dollar with your ripped jeans on.
Which one? The geezer at $1?
Yeah, man.
I was going for my Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd look, I'll have you know.
well, let me tell you, man, you've done a fairly good impression.
I mean, do you remember actually doing that interview as well?
I remember that, because we went across the road to the marquee that night, and when we walked on stage that night, I got hit in the head with a bottle of Heineken. And I remember we seen the guy that threw it. I remember going off stage and waiting as the crowd filed out, because we used to leave him to do Around the Walrus till last. So me and him went out the back through the dressing room. We waited and watched every single one of the crowd, because we were going to kill this geezer, and we never found him.
What was, the driving force for the band back then? I mean, what would your hopes, your dreams had been for the group, back in sort of 1994?
Just to get in the studio and make an album, make the album that we wanted to make, put it out, and hope people liked it. And that was it, really, I mean, and that was all. That's just people to listen, and us keep getting better at being in the band and being on stage, and just doing the same thing, just rocking.
Let's talk about, again, sort of pre-Oasis and pre-Noel joining as well, Liam. I mean, for those of us...
talk about that for
much better band now.
So kind of, tell us a story about how you kind of sort of met up with Bonehead and Gwigsy.
Well, there was a rain, and they were doing, like, pubs and that, and they were doing silly songs.
They weren't even doing pubs, they were doing wine bars.
Wine bars and that, and they were just...
A wine bar band?
Wine bar rock, man.
No, that was it, and then I just knew a few of them in it, and then someone said they'd sat the singer, and I thought, I'll try it, you know what I mean? Because none of my mates were really into bands, they were into dance music and stuff. I was like the weird one. And that was it, and then I joined the band, went down there, rehearsed and that, tried some things out, and it was rubbish, and I just carried on, and then Noel joined in.
Well, that was the start anyway, that was the start. Because if it wasn't for them, then I'd probably still be a roadie,
Well, let's go back, I feel as though this is your life. Let's go back to 1994. You haven't seen him for 2 years. Here he is all the way from the pub next door. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to 1994 and your version of events then on how, Liam, you managed to persuade Noel to join the band. What's this?
No, the band was called Oasis before I joined. We was together about, a month or something. Yeah, well, about 2 months or something, but we never done a gig. We never done a gig. Never done a gig. And it was, we were sad,
that's why I seen you was at a gig.
Yeah, that's it. But we never done a lot of gigs, we done one gig. And it weren't doing anything, and I knew it weren't doing anything. We needed
the band.
Yeah, I knew it. I was like that, and that's why I got so like in it. I thought once I put my foot in the door, our kid will come home and be gutted because that's what he's up for. But he finds it hard being himself nowadays and that. Oh, them days and that. Oh, yeah. So I knew once I got in there, he'd be up for it. So he come along and he had the songs which we needed because we needed a song like that.
I mean, it's like I owe my career to this man.
No, you don't. You don't.
No, still grateful to this man?
Well, yeah, some days, yeah.
I mean, I think there was always a lot made of the fact that, you had loads of songs in the arsenal, if you like.
Really?
What was it?
That one, she always comes up smiling and playing with her hair. Yeah. That was pish.
That'd have been top Tim O'Tay advert.
What was that called?
I don't know.
What was the title?
I know, but the chorus was actually an O. It went, oh. Actually, no, that sounded like Slade.
Let's talk about, influences, if we can. The people that inspired you guys to want to do this. Liam, can we sort of start with your good self? I mean...
Right, well, I got into music pretty late. I was never into music until I was about 17, 16. And then by 17, 18, I started understanding it and started doing, started liking it. I just weren't listening to it, you know what I mean? It started to get inside me and that. And then, so around about that time, it was the Stone Roses, Happy Mondays, the Lars, a bit of the Smiths, and that was about it, really. And then once I got into that world, I started digging out all the other stuff.
Would they have been the same bands for you, Noel, as well?
Yeah, the Smiths, without a doubt, were probably the start. The Smiths and the Jam was what made that was it. I used to think if I could be in a band which had the power of the Jam and the grace of the Smiths. Not to say that the Jam didn't have any grace, Paul, before you start.
Right in.
Yeah, I'd be laughing. And the songs of the Lars as well. I mean, the Lars first album is just still to this day. We play it on the tour bus constantly.
I mean, it's so instant as well.
It's good to play that album to Americans when like they come into your dressing room and they go, "Ooh, what's this? Is this the Beatles?" You go like, "No, it's better than the Beatles."
Well, talking of the Beatles, when did that kind of sort of influence start for both of you?
I think the first thing we all got into together was Revolver, and that's when they looked the best, and that's when they sounded the best. After that, when the beards and the hair started going a bit long, I mean, the White Album's great.
Once you don't get into the late stuff first, do you? You get into all the early stuff first, and once you're in, you're in.
But it was
getting out, you know what I mean? Whether they've got kebabs on their heads, you know
but
what I mean?
like a lot of people
you know what I mean?
But a lot of people just, they take, you know, they're like, yeah, I like the Beatles, but for us, and more or less the people that were around us, like the people, like Coyley used to do our sound, and Phil and that used to do the roadies and stuff like that. It was more than just a group. You know, that was it. If they were playing a certain guitar in a bootleg video we went out and found it, and we bought it, and we bought the amp, and then we tried to make it sound like that. And of course it never did, we just went back to the Les Paul, but you just have it. And if you seen them wear a shirt, you'd go and buy it, and you got your haircut like them. It was just,
and
they were just our band.
And the thing that they caned it, you know what I mean? They had it large. They were the biggest band ever, and always will be. And they were, not just sort of biggest. They were the best. You know what I mean? You get a lot of big bands that who. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of big bands out there today that are poo, I think. You know what I mean? And you respect them because they're big and that, and they've been about. You know what I mean? But the Beatles were the biggest and the best. You know what I mean? And that's why I loved them.
What about those who would maybe accuse the Beatles of being too big an influence of Oasis? And there's too much.
It's not their fault, is it?
But I don't think they are, because we're into other bands too. You know what I mean? We're into the Stones, the Pistols.
Just as big an influence, and the Pistols are in. And if you're too lazy to actually open your ears to that, then don't even bother listening to the music. But
it's not just
the thing.
you know what I mean? It can't be, because then if you're into the Beatles, then the Beatles were into all these other bands. You know what I mean? They had influences.
Tribute band.
Well, they had influences.
We've only made one song that sounded like the Beatles, and that was Whatever. The rest of it to me sounds like the Pistols doing the Stones. So the Beatles thing just come because lazy journalists. We were 5 geezers from Manchester. Me and them had the same sense of humour, and it just came that, you know.
We had brown hair.
Yeah, and we were, you know, and I suppose we banged on a little bit too much about the Beatles, but we were into the Stones, probably more so these days, me.
Yeah.
Can I bring it up to date? I mean, you know, you mentioned a little bit earlier on, Liam, about, you know, sort of big bands around now being poo.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that's not us, by the way.
What do you think of, you know, the music scene at the moment?
I think me personally, and I was going to be nice.
Hey, just go and make a cup of tea, because this is going to go on for a while.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's Christian rock, I think, these days, man. Too many acoustic guitars knocking about, which is not a problem with me. But people don't seem to. Rock and roll or punk rock seems to have gone right over these bands' heads. You know what I mean? It's like Christian rock, to me. And you know, and we've got good people. There's a lot of bands out there that have got good songs, but it's like, you know, they must have no tongues in their head because they ain't got nothing to say to anyone. You know, and they're all dead nice, man. And which is fine on that tackle, but you know, once you've been in a band, you've been around the world, right, so many times, you've got to have found someone out there to you off, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I've been around the world plenty of times, and just walking around London or looking in the papers and that, you know, and half of these bands, man, they're just like buzzing off everyone. It's like, come on, you fakes. You know what I mean?
What about for you, Noel? Do you agree with those sentiments?
I like, you know, I don't necessarily...
You know, they think by being polite sells you more records.
I don't necessarily...
You know, and being really nice, and it doesn't. You know what I mean? Doesn't.
I don't necessarily like bands as much as I like songs, you know. So there's bands that I don't like, but there's like certain songs that I absolutely love, you know. So
yeah. Who was the last band that made you feel like a fan? You know,
wait, this one's going to go on. Make yourself a cup of tea.
But, I mean,
which was the last one? Which was the last band that you buzzed off?
The last band that I buzzed off is the band that I'm buzzing off at the moment.
Play it.
No.
All right, fellas, time for a break now, but make sure to join us on the other side for more 10 years of Oasis, noise and confusion. Well, welcome back. I am, of course, joined by brothers Liam and Noel. We are celebrating 10 years of Oasis. Let's go back to, you know, the early beginnings of Oasis, if we can.
Certainly not going to go to the drawing board, you know what I mean, to do anything.
Back to the bar.
You know what I mean?
As I mentioned, I mean, you know, the early beginnings of Oasis have been sort of pretty well documented. I suppose, in a way, the stuff that dreams are made of. Let's go back to 1994. You gave me the Oasis Guide to Musical Evolution.
Who did? You did.
Probably.
What was the story with creation? Because Alan McGee saw you.
Well, in the beginning, Gary, right, there was like a big bang from the sun. Apparently, it was so gases and stuff, and then these things crawled out of the sea and turned into monkeys, which then turned into men.
Which then turned into wolf.
And then everything was all right until Man United won the double.
No, right, let's be serious now, right? You come with a gig, yeah? Right.
And didn't you lot hijack the gig, though?
No, we didn't. We didn't. No, we went there like normal people just to go do a gig, you know, and a good time about it. And then some bloke goes, "Oh, you're not. Who are you?" I'm like that. Oasis, mate. And he's like, "Oh, I've never heard you." I was like, "Ah, yeah, no. No one has, you know what I mean?" He's like, "Right, and we're not playing." He was like, "Ah, yeah, but you said we could play." So someone said it was sorted. You know what I mean? Then he said we couldn't. And then he was like, "Ah, right. You better let us play, man." He's like, "No." We were like, "You better let us play, man." Same, you know what I mean? And then we sneaked on sort of, done 4 songs. And then, man, that was before the club had even opened. There was a couple of people hanging about. McGee was one of them. And something just hit him, man, or whatever. Don't know.
One of my mates.
What your mates hit him? What memories do you have of that night at King Tut's, Noel?
It was, you know...
Because you only played 4 songs, I think Liam said there, yeah.
A lot of people think that that's, you know, that's sort of... The truth's been embroidered a little bit, but it was actually, I'd never met Alan McGee in my life, I didn't even know him. You know, there's a big cardboard cutout of him in Eastern Bloc Records where he looked like, he looked like Malcolm McLaren's wife or something, with a big ginger afro on that. You know, we came off stage and he said, "Have you got a record deal?" And he said, "What are you called?" And I said, "No." And he said, "No, your band." And I said, "Oh, it's Oasis." And he said, "Do you want, have you got a record deal?" So I said, "No." And he said, "Do you want one?" And we went, "Who with?" And he said, "Me." And I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Alan McGee." And I went, "What do you do?" And he said, "I own Creation Records." And we went, "Oh, Primal Scream, Juice and Mary Chain, pretty cool. Yeah, all right."
Talking about those early days, I mean, is there anything that you miss from those sort of like early days? You know, the kind of, you know, the travelling around in the van. Perhaps maybe you wouldn't miss that, but you know, just kind of proving yourselves.
I miss my waist size.
I miss the not knowing, because we know it all now. We've been there, seen it, done it on a number of occasions, and then back then it was like we'd all travel in the same van, and it all goes in stages. This thing with the band, as soon as you get a record deal and the roadies stop travelling with the band, it's finished. Then it becomes the thing, and you don't see them anymore. You see them at gigs and stuff like that. Whereas we would all share rooms together. We would all go out after the gig together. But them days, I just missed the, like, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Because we know when we put our next single out, it's going to be in the top 3, right? So we know that, and we know the album's going to be hopefully it'll be number 1 and stuff like that. But then,
that'd be number 1.
But then.
Single be number 1, and I'm asked after that. It can go where it
but back then it was like, you know, it's just the excitement of it all.
It will be number 1. I'm going to go on a marathon, marathon like
Victoria
Beckham vibe, man. I'm up and down the country promoting the new single and album.
Were there any sort of defining moments that you can think of, Noel, where you thought, hold on a minute, it really began to sort of take off there?
We recorded definitely maybe twice, and on the 3rd go of mixing it, we were just like, I'd given up, and we were on the road, and Marcus said he knew some guy in Manchester who might be able to, you know, turn it into something, because I was sick of it, you know, it didn't sound like us live, and I didn't know what we'd done wrong to make it sound really weak, and none of us did.
We hired a 50-year-old geezer in to mix it, that's why.
Well, anyway, but the 3rd time, me and Mark had to go mixing it. But anyway, I remember driving from a gig, from a hotel from a night before, to another gig, and Marcus had turned up and he put in a cassette of Cigarettes and Alcohol and Slide Away, and he said, "Tell us what you think of these mixes." And we were on this transit van, and there's the little tape recorder, and we were listening to the mix from the speakers down on the floor, and we turned up really loud, and I just remember going, "That's it, that's what it sounds like." And then he took the cassette back and he shut off, and then somebody presented us with the album. That was, to me, that was the defining moment. It was like, oh yeah, that sounds mega.
Do you remember the first time you heard Oasis on the radio as well, what you were doing?
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that.
I was living with Bonehead in Didsbury I was living in his loft with his tarantula, because he had a tarantula, because basically he was a student dressed up as a scally, and he had a tarantula and a picture of Dirk Bogarde on his bedroom wall, which is nice. And somebody phoned us up and said it's going to be on the evening session at like 7:10, and I think we stuck it on, and on it came, and we just sat watching this radio, drinking beer, and the phone was going. It was like, "Did you hear it?" It was like, "What?" So I just sat with it. It went from there, and then we were all pretty gutted that we had to go and sign off pretty much the next day.
Well, you certainly didn't do anything the conventional way when you were first signed, touting demo tapes about and the like. From your early interviews, in actual fact, you made it sound almost easy. Watch this.
Someone asked me, how did we go about? How did we go about and get this deal? I mean, we didn't go out anyway. It was just one of them things, and we're lucky enough that it happened. Hurrah! You know,
Anyway, can I say something now?
You know,
My name's
it's just
Noel.
one of them things.
I write all the songs.
You know, you walk down the road, you trip over, you break your leg, and you're gutted. You know, it's one of them things. Like
somebody breaks
we do a gig for 4, you know, do 4 songs, and he comes up and takes us away.
Were there any other record labels interested in you at the time? No? Creation got in there early?
There was well, after the fact, after we'd made it known we were going to sign Creation, there's a few labels came in, but we just wanted to sign to McGee's label because all the people that we met were just head cases, and we just thought, well, you know, at least we're not going to be out of place here, and they're actually quite scared of us as well.
At least
we can manipulate these losers.
Yeah.
What do you mean scared? How did that sort of manifest itself?
I always wore sunglasses for about the first 3 years, and he just talked in, well, you don't change much, he talked gibberish, and we were pretty much out of it all the time anyway, so they were all just like, well, yeah, whatever, you know. But they were lovely, lovely people, quite berserk, all of them. Tim and Chris Abbott especially, and Bobby Gillespie's brother, McGee, Christine, Johnny Hopkins. We had the time of our lives for about 2 years before Morning Glory came out, and it all went sort of big time. It was brilliant. We loved it, you know. And they were funny, and they just listened to every word that we said. And by Christ, we have a lot to say for ourselves.
I don't believe that. I mean, talking about the sort of hedonistic sort of like side. I mean, how bad was it for how long?
It wasn't bad. It was great. It wasn't bad. Don't let anybody tell you it was bad. It was fantastic. It was the best times of my life. And, you know, it's just the old body's packed up. Bummer.
I mean, can you sort of remember that much from that period subsequently, or...?
I can't remember a thing. I remember them pumps were good, and that's about it. No, I can't remember half of the stuff we got up to, to be honest.
Yeah, I can remember half of it. And that's probably the stuff that I'll allow myself to remember. I'm sure there's lots that I've just blanked because I just don't want to know.
What would have been the most sort of decadent situation that you would have ever sort of been in during that period?
Just taking the tour float off Jason, who does our backline, and he was our tour manager at the time. And they would send him off to pick us up in Manchester with like about 1,500 quid float for petrol and stuff like that. And it'd take us an hour to leave Manchester because we have to make a few stops along the way, and we'd have no money. And we'd just say, look, we'll just wing it, man. You know what I mean? We'll wing it. The single's out next week. It'll be fine. And we come back off tour with no money. We'd owe $3 grand to, you know, various people and stuff. But decadent, we'd just be drinking for days, you know, just proper drinking, gin and tonic for just days. I don't think there's much decadence. We were pretty broke at the time because, you know, like when you put records out, your money don't come in for about a year and a half afterwards. So we were all pretty skint. Which is another good thing about them days. You know, it sort of keeps your feet on the ground. But decadence, I don't know. I probably bought a guitar for about 600 quid and thought, you know, probably went home with a sleepless night. Because I thought I was skint or something. But, yeah.
Can we talk about, you know, your sort of like relationship with Creation Records? Did they allow you sort of like full creative control to do?
Yeah. 100%. Well, that's the deal with Creation anyway. You know, whatever band signs them, they don't. I suppose it's all changed now, but they never. Alan McGee heard Morning Glory on the day we left to go mixing. No, they just let us get on with it. You know, that's why we signed with them. It was 100% artistic control. We never asked anybody for everything, and nobody advised us to do anything.
And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be, man.
Which is why we're on our own record label now. It's like nobody gets involved. You know, when people say, can we hear stuff? Say put on the radio. You know, when it comes out. You know, we don't want to be friends with anybody. You know. And
that's the way it should be for every band. You know what I mean? If any band ever does take, you know, and he wins you about it, it's your own fault, man. You know what I mean?
But the thing about people in record labels is they always want a relationship with you. I thought we had a relationship. Didn't you sign the checks? We'll make the videos and we'll make the money. But other than that, just like go away and shut up, you know. And that's not being nasty. It's just that we don't like many people.
You don't know them anyway. Why should you? You know, it's like.
But even if I did know them, I wouldn't like them anyway.
Yeah, sure, but
as a rule.
How would you sort of, you know, kind of sum up, you know, McGee's sort of influence?
I've got nothing against him apart from the fact that he seems to have got himself in a muddle about his artistic input in the band, which I can assure you never happened once ever. But apart from that, you know, he just said, look, they are going to do it, so we went and done it, and we done it proud, and we made him multi-millionaire.
Yeah, and it's good.
So,
But very quickly, I mean, you know, why did it all sort of like go pear-shaped with creation?
Well,
What was it?
Alan tried it on with me one night. I was saying none of it. I said, I said, back up. Don't do it with people with ginger hair.
Okay. The press dubbed you the natural successors to the Manchester crown of the Stone Roses and the Happy Mondays. Is that something that sort of sat comfortably on your shoulders at the time, Liam?
No, because,
we didn't want to be the biggest band in Manchester. To us, that wasn't enough.
And that's a fact, you know what I mean? You hear a lot of these, you know, I don't give a you do moan about it, and they are bitter about it, half of them, you know what I mean? But, you know, I wanted to see what was over the, you know, rainbow, you know what I mean? And half of these people didn't.
Well,
and the only, you know, any kind of thing we've got in common with any of them bands is that we're from Manchester.
Well, this is what you had to say back in 1994 about being a Manchester band.
It's like punishment, this. Yeah.
What sort of influence do you think, you know, that scene has left? I mean, you know, do you think...
I don't think it's left any.
You don't think it's left a legacy or anything like that?
Well, probably the best thing to come out of that scene was, I mean, I dare to say it, but the only band that started up because of what the Stone Roses were doing was us.
You know what I mean?
So I suppose if there's a legacy left, it's us, I suppose.
Yeah.
Could Oasis come from any other city around the country? I mean, are they integrally part of Manchester and what's happened?
No,
we could have come in it. But then again, we wouldn't be us, you know. We wouldn't. We would, but we wouldn't. We'd sort of like, if we were from London, we'd be sort of like London boys, wouldn't we? You know what I mean? But, I mean, we're not no Manchester, you know. We're here to bring, you know, I've got baggy pants on today, but I'm not no baggy.
I mean, you know, you've kind of sort of always proclaimed yourselves as, I love the London accent, I mean, you know, you've kind of sort of proclaimed yourself as, you know, one of the sort of greatest rock and roll bands in the world, and that was the thing that impressed me when we first did that interview, that kind of sort of self-confidence. I just sort of wondered where that came from.
I'll show you where it came from. Read the track listing of that. And that is purely and simple down to that. You know, rock and roll star, live forever,
yeah.
Columbia, Supersonic, Cigarettes and Alcohol, Slide Away, Married with Children. Still to this day not to be better by any band from any country. And it's as simple as that, you know. Once you've written Slide Away, Live Forever, Supersonic, Cigarettes and Alcohol, you know, and then you're off your head all the time, and then people are telling you that you're great. It's just like, and then
you've got, you know, Manchester's always had good bands, you know what I mean, and it always will have, you know what I mean.
Totally.
So you've got, so you have to be good, you know what I mean. And I think, you know, I can't, you know, and I think the bands get better and better from Manchester, and we'll wait and see what comes out from there in 5 years' time or whatever. It's gone a bit, it's taking its time coming this time round, but you've got to be good to come from Manchester, I think. I really do.
How much do you think your sort of Mancunian personalities and charm, you know, contributed to your success as well?
I don't know about the charm. What charm?
Well, there is, I mean, you know, watching that, I mean, I think there was, you know, that's what certainly came across to me.
We're quite honest, you know what I mean? It's just honesty, and like, you know, there's no, we haven't trained for it, you know what I mean? There's no training, you know what I mean? Going on. We're just a bunch of lads, man. They just started, who love music, played in the band. We happen to be pretty good at it, and that's it. You know?
I think at
the
any
end of the
point
day, I don't give a toss, you know what I mean? And it's not, you know, and it's not like, you know, there's loads of people out there that don't give a toss, but there's nothing to give a toss about, you know what I mean? And you know,
and I think at any point where it started to get too pretentious, we would always just think, hang on, it's just laugh anyway, you know, because we don't know where we're going to be in 5 years. So I think, you know, I didn't really, when I started taking it too seriously, you know, he would bring it back down to the level of
3-year-old,
you know, a puppy. 3-year-old Dalmatian is highly strung.
rocking.
You know, and at that point where it got too ridiculous for me, I would always try and bring it back to the classroom. Now, you boys, sit down.
Double episode of Emmerdale.
Today we shall record rock and roll history. You, Gallagher, you shall sing. Bonehead, you shall strum. You shall play bass. McCarroll, you shall leave.
What do you think, you know, people's perception of you were when you were starting out?
They hated us.
They didn't hate us. I remember moving to London and everybody loved me in Camden.
Well, I've always been hated. I quite like it. Keep it up.
Well, I've personally, from a personal point of view, I've always felt the love of this nation. Anywhere I ever go in this capital city, people doff their cap. All right, Noel. All right, Cabby. How's it going? It's all right. How's that brother of yours? Still alive, I'm afraid. You know. I said, but I've always felt the love. I've always felt love, man.
Yeah, me too.
And what about now? Well, I mean, what about now? I mean, is that sort of, you know, kind of something you think about? I mean, I remember when we chatted last year, Noel, before the Wembley gig, you know, you said to me that you weren't sure what people's, you know, perception of the band was anymore. You know, rock isn't hip, it's all dance music now. Is that sort of something that you still...
Not because of that. It's just because we're sort of 10 years into it now, and I don't know. You see some people down the front of the gig who probably only started into the band from Wonderwall. See, to me, to this day, I'm still flabbergasted how Definitely Maybe has not sold as many as the rest of the albums, you know what I mean? Because it's the least selling, and it's like, well, where's your head at, man, you know what I mean? It's like, you always buy somebody's first album if you buy the second one. And it's just like, you know, I don't know, it's pretty strange, really. It's like, it went up like that after Wonderwall, and I just wonder how many people remember us from them days. I mean, obviously in England, fine, but around the rest of the world, I wonder how we perceived it all. I mean, when we do interviews like this around the world, we're subtitled all the time, you know, I mean, which is quite bizarre.
Because the Mongs, man.
I hate to interrupt.
The world are all Mongs.
All of them.
Good point, well argued.
Mongs.
I mean, I sort of like wondered, you know, what kind of sort of prompted, you know, I mean, you two sort of moving down to London from
I moved out
Manchester.
to get, and this is the truth. I moved out of London, and this is, I remember being in Paris, right, and I told him he was moving to London. What are you moving to London for? And I didn't want to say get away from him because he's doing me head in. He's always getting us barred from all the pubs and stuff like that. We couldn't go anywhere. We owed people money, you know, so like everybody was always knocking on the door, going, you owe us 500 quid your kid borrowed for an amp or something. And so I was like, I'm going to move to London. And he thought I was going to move to London, right, ditch the band and start some supergroup in London. And I was like, no, please, you know. And of course, 6 weeks later, I think I'll move to London.
No, mate.
Where are you living?
Is that true, Liam?
Of course it is
Listen,
true.
my reasons for moving London.
You are?
My reasons for
Your
moving
reason to
London.
move to London was because just to borrow money off me when you were skinny.
Listen, man, London needed it. I personally didn't want to go. I wanted to stay in Manchester, but you
I
know.
wish I'd never moved down there, to be honest.
I mean, the music press latched onto the band pretty quickly, didn't they? I mean, were you guys aware of what your appeal to them was at the time?
I've never understood that lot. Maybe one or two of them. But it's all... I never understood... Because they invented this... They invented the Britpop thing that but before that we were New Wave and New Wave, you know. So they invented this laddish culture type thing, and...
You know, they tried to.
That's what
They
I'm
didn't
saying.
do it very well because everything that they thought about were all students. So I don't see any students knocking about that's a lad. You know what I mean? They got their head buried in books, you know what I mean? So this mad thing's been going on for years, but there just weren't that many in bands.
Anyway, as I was saying... So
You know, on that Britpop thing, there was no lads in, there was no lad culture in that Britpop because they're all students.
Do you feel kind of sort of like looking back as well that, you know, you were sort of set up almost as sort of spokespeople for a generation as well?
I think... No,
Because you guys made great copy, didn't you? I mean, you know, there was two sort of like very strong-willed characters with something to say.
Somebody would have actually said to me, you're the spokesman for this generation. I'd have been worse than I actually was. I didn't actually think anyone took a blind bit of notice of what I was saying until like the police were outside my house one morning going, come on, you're not allowed to say that in public. You know, so, but if anybody would have, if I'd have noticed I was the spokesman for a generation, I'd have gone completely...
You get gongs for it these days. Bono gets one every year. Don't he? For spokesman of whatever he's talking about.
All right, fellas, let's pause for a breather, but make sure not to go away. Join us on the other side of the break for more 10 years of Oasis, Noise and Confusion. Well, welcome back. I am, of course, joined by brothers Liam and Noel. We are celebrating 10 years of Oasis. Let's go back to 1994. This is what you had to say about your audience and who you thought made up the audience at that time.
I've seen a lot of nice girls coming to our gigs, and it's bloody nice to see it. Telling you, but I suppose there's a lot of lads coming because of like thinking we're this mad hooligan band, and we're not. I ain't no hooligan. I'm just me. And they're probably coming to see like this little whatever, you know, like we're bolting and all that, but they're not going to see that. Is that what you asked then? Sort of.
I'm just laughing at you saying you're not an hooligan, but I've read bits in there where you said I like fighting me.
No, I'm not. I'm up for it. I'm not. No, I don't go out of my way. I'm not like big bullies tackle. You know what I mean? Like one of them and that. If someone comes your way and they want, you know, then I'm up for it. Because you've got to be on. You know, it's a tough world out there.
Is it still as tough?
Yeah, it is, man, yeah. And it's right. You've got to look after yourself, haven't you?
Did you ever say that?
I ain't Mike Tyson or anything, but, you know, if someone gets on my case, man, and you've got to do it, haven't you?
Did you ever say that, what Noel said, I'm mad for fighting me? Or
No, I'm probably mad for fighting me. I do wake up and give myself a couple of slaps every now and again. I'm not mad for fighting, you know. But there's a lot of knobheads out there that want to get on your case sometimes.
Verbal fighting, I think, is what I meant.
Oh, right. But, you know, you've got to look after yourself. You have to, Gary. Everyone does.
Gary doesn't have to look after himself, surely.
What?
Gary's got people to look after.
What? I'm just saying you've got to look after
yourself. Met my missus. No, looking back, are there any incidents that when you do think about them now, that kind of sort of bring you out in a cold sweat, where you think, you know, that could have been the end of Oasis, or it was all there for a reason?
The only thing I regret, man, was not going to America that time. I regret that. When I left, when I didn't bother going on these, I got on a plane and stuff, and I come back to sort out the house. At the time, it was right, but looking back on it and hearing what people have got to say, and I wish I'd have just got on the plane.
We left Nebworth, right? We've got the album Morning Glory is #5 in the States. The single Wonderwall, we had a single in the top 10, man, and the proper big charts. You've got to hand it to us for not giving a What do? Yeah. We go there without the singer. Do a gig without him. Then we've done this big tour where it's like, you know, hey guys, we give this a concerted push, we get the #1 album in the country. What do? We pull the tour halfway through. Because you called my pint a puff, and I'm not having that from you or anybody else. I'm going home. And that was it, you know. It's like, not like, you know, nobody can ever accuse us of being careerists. We abused the position of being in the biggest band. We were the biggest band in the world at that point. Sold the most records, played to the most people, and we were treated it with the contempt that it deserves. It never really affected it never really affected us. It was always just, we were drunk half the time. I remember him and Bonehead rolling around in a car park in Minneapolis in like about 2 foot of snow because he said something about Bonehead's coat.
He said what, sorry?
About Bonehead's
coat.
Brought,
you know them really dodgy sheepskins that people that summer? You know,
he had a fur collar, and he's going, so we'd had an argument on the bus about something, Bonehead tried to break it up, and he went, don't break up one of my fights with a coat like that, and he went, well, what's up with my coat? And he went, it's a Puff's coat. He went, you calling my coat a Puff? And I swear to you, within 2 minutes, there was a proper bundle in the car park. And I was the first one who started the fight in the first place. So I was sat at the back, having the drinks, going, I'm going on. I've had it, man. I'm not having fighting over musical differences and lyrics and money is fine. Over the lining of a leather jacket, I'm going to draw the line at this, man. Get me a taxi.
No, the thing is, honestly,
you
know, there's been no one out of Oasis or the way it's gone has kissed out. Because I'm quite proud of that.
Oh, and I think
to make our band any bigger than what it already is or whatever. And Americans or anything, we never kissed out.
I tell you what, at the point where we were the biggest band in the world...
Even in America, people going about cracking America and that.
At the point where we were the biggest band in the world, right? We got to this point, we were the biggest band in the world, and at that point we just said, we're not playing the game, we're not kissing anybody.
No, but the more bigger you get, people expect you to kiss out.
The music business disowned us overnight.
Being in America, you know, being American didn't entertain me at all, didn't impress me at all, you know what I mean?
I'm sure it wasn't because of the coat that Bonehead decided to leave the band, but I wonder whether you could sort of, you know, tell us the story.
I don't know. To be honest, he was getting a bit leery in the studio with some of the guys that were working on the album. So I suppose one of the guys was saying, look, because he just kicked this guy's bed. One of the engineers who's working on the album, right? He used to get him up at 4 o'clock every morning, pouring wine over him and all that stuff. And I thought, well, I thought, well, I'm not having that. People who come, you know, to work for us, who are trying to make us sound good on record. So I kicked his bedroom door in one night, dragged him out of bed and said, right, how do you like it? You know. The next day he got up and he said, right, well, you're really out of order and I'm going home. So I said, right, well, I'll call you a taxi. I haven't seen him to this day or spoke to him.
And Griggsy didn't leave too long after that.
Well, Griggsy probably still thinks he's in the band and the band's still coming out to pick him up to do a gig in Wembley. You know, roof, man, where's that car here or what? Anyway, listen, Griggs, if you're watching, you left.
Let's talk about the success of the band, if we can. I mean, I was reading an interview recently with Coldplay, where they talked about success and had to say, we've all been either physically or mentally ill getting to grips with the situation. Success. Well, this is going to be my question. I mean, can you relate to that? I mean,
no, I can't.
They've obviously never worked on a building site, is all I'm saying.
And they're obviously not into it. It's like, that's what you do. You write good music, you sell it, people want to wear it, you get on the plane, you leave your mates behind, and you leave your missus behind, and it's hard work, but that's what it's about.
Well, the thing is,
you know, I'm physically trained. My ass don't get blasted in a pub, man. You'll be all right.
Where we come from,
do you know what I mean?
Where we come from, it was, you know, the first thing on the agenda was to get out of there and get in a tour bus and go and do it.
Yeah, man.
So for these cats to be saying, sorry, I may slip into 60s mode there. For these cats to be saying, yeah, for these cats to be saying that, you know, they all feel the pressure. It's like they've obviously lived very sheltered lives. Now, right,
these cats, cats to be saying their whiskies ain't the same, man.
Yeah, man.
And I like them, like Coldplay and all that, and all them bands and that. But at the end of the day, students can't be away from home, man. It's, you know what I mean? Students.
Well, of course, it has been well documented in the past that at times you two have a pretty tempestuous relationship. Here's what you had to say in that very first interview about the occasional difference of opinions between your good selves.
What's it like being brothers in a band?
He's speechless, look at that.
It's all right, I think it's all right, mate. I think it's very, very funny.
I mean, if you row, what sort of things do you row about?
Everything. Everything. We don't even have to row. All we've got to do is look at each other in a certain kind of way, and we row. Without even, like, opening our mouth. It's just going inside our heads, you know what I mean?
Is that still the sort of situation? Look at each other in the wrong way, or have you kind of gone past that?
We can do, yeah. It just depends, you know. There's always going to be, like, little rows and that. There should always be. But it's not as much as what it used to be.
Well, because it's a lot more. It's a lot more.
Everyone's a lot. You know, I'm a lot happier than what I used to be, which is nice, and I think he is. And
it's a better class of rowing now. It's more refined.
Yeah.
Why are you?
We just send each other's lawyers letters.
Why are you happier? Just because of like things in your personal life, and that's kind
yeah,
of calmed
happy,
down.
Mate, I'm rocking. Yeah.
I mean, how would you say that, you know, your relationship with each other has evolved over the last 10 years?
And it's stayed pretty much the same to me. We respect each other, because he's like a songwriter now, so it's like we respect each other's, believe it or not, we respect each other's opinions more, I think, and it's not so much me now, it's more like us as a band. And that just comes from getting older, I think, and just being in it for 10 years, you know. And you just know that it's just not, a lot of what we used to argue about is just not, it's just all bullshit. We were bored, you know.
What about, you know, you two guys sort of seem sort of pretty strong-willed. I mean, if you do have a Barney, and you know, you sort of, you know, talked about there about, you know, you've both been in a more sort of like relaxed frame of mind. I mean, who kind of sort of normally compromises if there is a little bit of a...
Such that is bullshit. That's
no, that's me, mate. Of course I compromise.
It means.
My middle name, mate. Liam Compromising Gallagher.
You explain the word compromise to me in a sentence, right, and I'll give you that. Go on then.
Compromise?
Yeah.
It just means,
You haven't got a clue, have you?
I don't know what it means.
What does it mean then?
It means like...
It doesn't mean...
It means backing up.
That's reverse.
What about the press as well? I mean, you know, they've obviously made a lot about, you know, you two not getting along. You know, was that normally them sort of fabricating it?
It sells papers, doesn't it? I mean, we read stuff in the papers now about other bands, and we just say, well, it's just all flannel, man. They're just tarting it up for, you know, because people in bands are usually dull as dishwater anyway. Just like if you get two people who are willing to speak their mind and they really couldn't give a about the consequences, it's like everybody went, hey, you know. And, you know, I could never sue anybody for misquoting me because half the time I'd get on and say, did I say that? And they go, yeah, you didn't. Like, all right, fair enough. I really cannot sit and defend myself. I have to say I've probably said most of the things that have been attributed to me.
Can we talk about your family and, you know, what the sort of the knock-on effect on them has been, you know, with the success of Oasis? I mean, like your mum and also your brother as well.
Our kid probably is a bit left out by it all because it's like his two brothers overshadow anything that he does, and he accepts that and he gets on with it. My mum, I haven't noticed any change apart from she's extremely proud.
Yeah, I think everything's the same, really. I just like, you know, it's like...
Again, it's like
old saying,
working class, you know what I mean? We don't take things that seriously. It's not like, oh, my two boys are down in London and people are writing about them. My mum's just like, well, at least you've got jobs and you're still healthy, you know, go and enjoy yourself. We're not sit and analyse things too much, you know? It is what it is.
There's too much happening, you know what I mean? There's always something new happening, so you're on to the next thing, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of sitting and... I can never dwell on anything more than 2 seconds, because there's always something else going on, which is good.
What about, I'm sure this sort of like changes from day to day, but what have been the sort of like the standout defining moments for you guys, looking back over the last 10 years, you know, that have made it all worthwhile, you know, the reason why you formed this band and started this adventure in the first place? Liam, can I start with you?
Getting a record deal, getting your songs heard, being able to go in and still write music, playing it to the people who like it, being able to go around the world, doing, you know, seeing things and that, and having a few quid in my pocket.
And any kind of particular sort of like moments when you know it
Playing
kind
Main
of...
Road, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, why was that so special to you?
Because it's the team I love, and it's where we played our music, and it was great. And they're with everything, you know, I like it all, man. It's all been good.
What about for you, Noel?
Just being in the most of the defining moments just come in the studio where you're watching the speakers where the music's coming out and you're just going, yeah, right, it's done. It's how it sounded in my head. And in the live side, Main Road and Sheffield Arena, the first time, that was the first arena gig, Main Road was the first stadium gig. And getting the recognition in America, and then, you know, getting the phone calls off your management saying you've done another 500,000 records last week.
And believe it or not, being in a band, you learn a lot, you know what I mean?
What kind of things?
Like how fickle people can be, you know what I mean? As in
just
general people, how fickle can be. And you just learn a lot about people.
And you travel. You know, you travel to the
that's good.
You know, you travel, you see
it's good to know what's going on, you know what I mean?
Well, let's put it in the context. The kids that we used to hang around with, right, there was about a dozen of us, right? Some of them are dead, right, through smack. Some of them are now drug dealers, and some of them are just, will never get out of that thing. And that, to me, that defines being in the band. It's like we've done something for ourselves, you know what I mean? We got far out. Nobody gave us anything. We didn't send out demo tapes to anybody. Somebody came and found us. And I always say that to people when they say, you and your brother this, and I say, yeah. It's like, we never asked for a record deal. We never asked, right, to be put in the papers. We never asked for a record. They didn't even ask to make a record. All we asked for was the people to sit up and watch us play. You know, that's it. You know, it's your fault.
Well, let's talk about the mood of the band at the moment, if we can. I mean, how would you sort of describe that?
It's a bit too nice, I think, at the moment.
What's your reaction to him saying that?
Yeah, it's a bit.
Is it?
Isn't it?
Is it? It's a bit.
It's a bit,
What have you been getting up to in the studio while I've been in the beef for you?
Nah, nothing, man. No, it's good, man.
Leave all that free love at home, man.
No, it's good. It's a good. No, it's good. The band's great, man. I think it's really good at the moment.
We're all
it's the best it's been. We're all right, you know.
We're all into music. Is the main thing, and everybody is into what we're doing. And I just think it's pretty chilled out, but it's pretty creative.
Yeah,
we've got too many songwriters in this band.
It's really creative. It's really creative, and it's really good.
Long go. Hey,
I know it's good, and it's good to get.
Years ago, when you knew where you stood, who writes the songs in this? But that'll be me then. That's like four people stand up.
But that's a good sign. It's a good sign to get creative when you're that little bit older. You know what I mean?
Paper.
And it's come around at the right time, I think. Instead of being too creative, too young. You know what I mean?
Tell us about the album, because you know halfway through it, I think I'm right in saying.
We've got too many songs. It's like, yeah, we're there. We're getting there. We're still. It's all done apart.
And the album's loud, exciting, and it's us, and it's rock and roll.
Fellas, what about you know, finally wrapping it up? I mean, where do you think you're going to be in another 10 years' time as well? I mean, where would you like to be? Would you still like to be doing this?
Sat here talking to you, Gary.
I don't. 10 years. I don't know what. I'd like. We'll all still be involved in it. Who knows?
I'll be still in this band, me personally.
Even if he's gone solo.
Yeah. No, I'll be. You know, there's a lot to do, man. I think musically, you know what I mean. That's what all I'm asked about now is making the best music for Oasis. You know what I mean.
Until anybody comes up with a better idea for what me and him can do for a living, then we'll still be making music. Answers on a postcard.
What about goals left for the band as well? I mean, when we chatted, you know, last year, in fact, to both of you, you know, but no, I think you sort of like said, you know, we've done Wembley now, you know, we've done Madison Square Garden, we've done sort of like Nebworth. I mean, are there any sort of, you know, specific goals that you have left to achieve, or is it just about the music now and making that as...
A gig doesn't necessarily mean a goal, you know what I mean? You can play anywhere, as long as you're good. You can play the biggest gigs in the world and be, you know what I mean?
Really?
If your music doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? So it's all about the music, I think, now. Personally, for me, you know, you can play anywhere. I'd still like to get into situations, and you always will do.
The thing about the last 10 years is he looks good, I sound good. Now we're both sounding pretty good, and I still look like an egghead. I still look like I'm wearing my other brother's clothes.
Listen, thanks for keeping me company during this.
Pleasure.
Thanks for the last 10 years of noise and confusion.
Is he going to do it on his own? He's been pretty shit.
Get out.